When it came time to pay, Charlie realized he didn't have enough money. Seeing his prolonged hesitation, the waitress irritably said, "Do policemen eat for free? It seems I'll have to pay this bill myself." Those words made Charlie immensely embarrassed, but he was by no means someone who sought petty advantages. In fact, he had always tipped the staff every time he finished a meal. Spotting a lottery ticket in his wallet, an idea suddenly sparked in his mind. He held the lottery ticket and said to the waitress, "If I win, I'll share half with you. If I don't win, tomorrow I'll bring money to compensate you double the cost of the meal." Although she didn't believe his words, the waitress casually agreed. No one expected that this seemingly insignificant lottery ticket would actually win the grand prize, totaling $64 million. After confirming it again and again, his wife excitedly cheered loudly. Even after deducting the shares of other winners that day, they still received a colossal sum of $4 million. This unexpected windfall was enough to change their previously impoverished lives. However, Charlie's mood was entirely different, because he remembered his promise from earlier in the day. If he won, he would share half of the prize money. Initially, he didn't dare to tell his wife, but after an internal struggle, he still decided to confess proactively. His wife, upon hearing it, nearly went insane with rage, because she deeply understood her husband's stubborn personality and knew even better that he would surely keep his word. It turned out that Charlie had loved helping people since he was young. Thus, as an adult, he naturally became a precinct police officer, specializing in resolving the difficulties and worries of all citizens in the city. He would help visually impaired people cross the street, and he would also assist women unexpectedly going into labor with their delivery. He could use his meager salary to regularly donate to impoverished areas, and he could also risk his life to apprehend robbers. Because he loved children, after work, he would even teach students how to play baseball. Without a doubt, he was a recognized good neighbor. The commendation flags he received were countless. His wife, however, was the complete opposite. Not only did she have an extreme, selfish, and critical personality, she even openly complained to customers at her hair salon that her husband was inflexible and didn't know how to accept bribes to fill their meager wallet. That day, after having a beautiful dream, his wife suddenly had an idea. Charlie absolutely had to buy a lottery ticket using their wedding anniversary date. Although he felt that relying on winning the lottery to get rich was absurd, Charlie, who always indulged his wife's every request, still casually bought a lottery ticket during his patrol. However, when he returned home and showed the ticket to his wife, he was severely scolded. It turned out their wedding date was the 27th, but because they always celebrated the anniversary a day early, Charlie had bought number 26. This caused strong dissatisfaction from his wife. Just as his wife was about to continue complaining, the winning numbers were announced on TV. In an instant, his wife's extreme anger transformed into frantic joy. However, before she could even enjoy a few minutes of happiness, Charlie revealed his promise to the waitress from earlier in the day. Charlie's wife, whose mood was like riding a roller coaster, adamantly refused to share $2 million with a stranger, and even when she saw his dilemma, she used the guise of love to bind him, forcing him to lie that he hadn't won. In that moment, Charlie was torn. Until the next day, standing in front of the restaurant, he still hesitated, unsure whether to follow his conscience or to prioritize his wife's feelings. A colleague seemed to notice his hesitation and reminded him to do what was right. What is the right thing to do, after all? He still wasn't clear. And so, Charlie walked into the restaurant with an uneasy feeling. Before he could even speak, the waitress, Yvonne, spoke first. "Yesterday was the worst day of my life. Actually, you didn't do anything wrong. I shouldn't have taken out my bad feelings on you." It turned out that after graduating from college, Yvonne had gone to New York with an actress's dream, but despite trying for several years, she was still just a humble waitress. Moreover, yesterday, her terrible husband not only stole all their savings, but also intentionally overdrew her credit card by $20,000. This left her penniless, making even filing for divorce a luxury. Although she humbled herself and spoke eloquently in court, misfortunes truly never come singly. As soon as she stepped out of the courthouse, it started raining cats and dogs, and her umbrella uselessly broke midway. Returning home, she was soaked like a drowned rat, only able to quickly eat a dry sandwich to fill her stomach. After eating, she rushed to work. As a result, because she was late, her boss mercilessly deducted 2 hours from her pay. One could say, Yvonne's yesterday was truly the epitome of bad luck. In fact, even today, the situation wasn't much better. Seeing that her boss ignored the conversation between her and Charlie and directly called her to the counter, he angrily scolded her for not noticing someone had skipped out on their bill yesterday. To compensate for the store's losses, the boss also put all the debt onto her. Fortunately, Yvonne wasn't a weak person to be easily manipulated. When the boss ordered her to make him coffee, she secretly poured cigarette ashes into it in retaliation. Seeing Yvonne, despite her difficult circumstances, maintain such optimism, Charlie, who had been hesitant moments before, decided to listen to his inner voice and uphold his kindness. Having already prepared a small gift as an apology, he handed Yvonne the carefully wrapped eyeglass chain. He chose this gift because he had noticed yesterday that Yvonne often couldn't find her glasses, and with this chain, she could wear them around her neck. Upon receiving the gift, Yvonne immediately lit up with joy, and at the same time, she gradually lowered her guard towards Charlie. Next, Charlie once again placed the choice of destiny in Yvonne's hands. He let Yvonne choose whether she wanted double the cost of her meal or half of the lottery prize money. Since she had just received a gift from Charlie, and Yvonne didn't think her unlucky self could possibly win the lottery, she chose double the meal cost, with the mindset of not wanting to take too much advantage. Afterward, she unexpectedly heard him say that he had won $4 million. Initially, Yvonne didn't believe it at all, even scolding Charlie for teasing her. It wasn't until he firmly repeated it again that she couldn't restrain herself from cheering to celebrate this heaven-sent good fortune. Yvonne not only warmly hugged everyone in the restaurant, but also generously announced that all lunch meals that day were on her, Yvonne. Not only that, she also gave every customer a sweet ice cream, while the restaurant owner hastily noted down every gift, fearing that if even a cent was missing, the store would go bankrupt. Seeing Yvonne so happy, Charlie also felt relieved that he hadn't lied. At this moment, his colleague outside also gave him a look of approval. In fact, his colleague was not surprised by this outcome at all, because he always knew that no matter how conflicted he was internally, Charlie would ultimately do the right thing. However, when his wife found out, she immediately transformed into a machine gun, ceaselessly firing at Charlie. Even on the bus to the prize collection site, she unceremoniously grumbled nonstop. Fortunately, Charlie had already thought of a way to deal with it. He knew his wife's vanity well, so he suggested that she would be the one to personally announce on stage at the award ceremony about sharing $2 million with Yvonne. By doing so, she would surely be able to make the front page of newspapers across the city with the title "Woman with a Heart of Gold." After all, no one shares $2 million with a stranger. By then, under the media's hype, his wife could not only become the center of everyone's attention, but even seize this opportunity to become a star overnight, with endorsement deals coming her way nonstop. And these things could absolutely not be bought by the mere $2 million for such glory and prestige. Although she knew this was just an empty promise, blinded by wealth and luxury, his wife still accepted the offer. Soon, the official award ceremony began, and Charlie, his wife, and Yvonne were, as expected, surrounded by reporters. When his wife genuinely pretended to be generous in front of the cameras and said, "I don't mind sharing $2 million with a stranger." Indeed, through newspapers and news screens, the $2 million prize money spread throughout the streets of America. However, the only regrettable thing was that his wife couldn't achieve her dream of becoming a star. Not even a single extra bottle of the shampoo from her salon, which she had praised endlessly under the spotlight, was sold. Nevertheless, this did not affect her becoming more vain and arrogant. She would only shop at the most luxurious places, and she would only buy the most high-end designer clothes. Charlie, like an obedient bodyguard, followed behind, carrying all sorts of large and small bags. That day, his wife had just bought an expensive mink fur coat when she was splattered with red paint by animal rights activists. In the end, she had no choice but to change into her everyday clothes and slink back home. Completely contrary to her, Yvonne, after receiving the money, immediately paid off all the debts her ex-husband had incurred. Soon after, she bought back the old restaurant where she used to work, becoming both the owner and an employee. To express her gratitude to Charlie, she even named a charity table after him, dedicated to providing hot meals for homeless friends. It was thought that the lives of the two families would no longer be deeply intertwined. But that day, when Charlie was conducting a routine check of a store, he found all the customers in a convenience store standing motionless. Only a few people were carefully gesturing with their eyes. From a police officer's keen intuition, Charlie immediately sensed something amiss, but he didn't tip off the culprits. Instead, he calmly walked out of the store, then told his colleague to call for backup, while he circled around from the basement and re-entered the store. Sure enough, he discovered two robbers in the act. After carefully observing the situation inside the store, Charlie took the lead, throwing a canned good directly at the head of the robber with a gun. Waiting for that robber to be stunned and fall, he immediately rushed forward and wrestled the other one to the ground. Just then, backup arrived, and all hostages were safely rescued. Only Charlie was shot in the left arm during the commotion and consequently had to retire early. But in misfortune, there is fortune, and in fortune, there is misfortune. With major media outlets competing to report brave lottery policeman apprehends robbers, Charlie became a city hero overnight. Even the mayor personally awarded him a medal. However, at the award ceremony, Charlie did something that made his wife's face change color. He announced he would donate $10,000 to the Police Fallen Officers Family Aid Fund to comfort the souls of his deceased colleagues. For his wife, who valued money above all else, this news was like a bolt from the blue. But she couldn't force Charlie to swallow his words. So, to prevent the money from being squandered, she began renovating their house. Not only that, to deeply warn Charlie, she even arbitrarily threw away his favorite chair without his permission. Perhaps they still hadn't realized that under the test of money, their values had diverged significantly. Charlie leaned towards pursuing a peaceful life while also caring about the situation of those around him. His wife, on the other hand, was more selfish. In her eyes, there were only two words: self-interest. That day, she again forced Charlie to attend a yacht party organized by the lottery company. Amidst the lively cocktail party, a white-bearded old man was eloquently boasting about how much money he had made in a year from stock investments. His wife immediately smelled money and approached him. When she heard the key points the man was saying, she didn't forget to take out paper and pen to meticulously take notes. Having no interest in these get-rich-quick schemes, Charlie went out onto the deck alone. As a result, he happened to see Yvonne, who was late, arguing with a taxi driver. Out of kindness, Charlie stepped off the boat to help Yvonne resolve the trouble. But just then, the yacht unexpectedly set sail, leaving the two behind. Yvonne immediately felt guilty, but Charlie felt lighter than ever because he didn't like parties to begin with, and his wife, immersed in the life of the wealthy, would feel even less regretful without his company. So the two who were left behind decided to go with the flow. They found a restaurant together to enjoy dinner. At this moment, a romantic wedding was taking place nearby. The happy scene made both of them feel a little emotional. Yvonne said, "My husband used to love me very much. He not only frequently gave me flowers and took me for walks, but also occasionally invited me to luxurious restaurants. But over time, he turned into a lying scoundrel, and our love and family broke apart within just 3 years because of one lie after another." Charlie, upon hearing this, also began to reminisce about his past with his wife. It turned out they had known each other since high school. Both were each other's first love. Due to their pure and passionate affection, they registered their marriage as soon as they became adults. For some unknown reason, the two who were once inseparable, perfectly in sync, now resembled two intersecting lines whose distance between them grew wider and wider. Perhaps the night was too beautiful, or perhaps two disappointed souls were too lonely. When the soft music played, Yvonne unexpectedly invited Charlie to dance, and as the two drew closer, an indescribable feeling gradually arose between them. Fortunately, both understood their boundaries, knowing that the other was merely a passing stranger in life, and that developing a friendship was already immensely valuable. Moreover, Charlie kept reassuring himself that with just a little more time, his relationship with his wife would surely return to how it was. However, at this moment, his wife was still engrossed in a lively conversation, as if blinded by the illusion of money. Until the ship docked and Charlie came to pick her up, she still didn't forget to give the white-bearded old man a charming smile. Since Charlie had made plans with Yvonne to go out the previous evening, the next morning, they both went to a nearby square to roller skate. As a result, Charlie had a rough start. On a slope, he slid straight into the lake. This action made Yvonne burst into laughter. Afterwards, the two kind-hearted souls went together to the subway station to offer free rides to citizens. Although it was just a small, insignificant amount of money, it was like spring rain, soothing the weariness in everyone's hearts. In the following days, they also did many other charitable acts. For example, they rented an entire baseball field, inviting neighborhood children, friends, and relatives to enjoy a relaxing weekend. And this action inadvertently sowed a seed of dreams and hope for financially disadvantaged children who had few opportunities to experience the joy of sports. However, that day, when Charlie happily brought the neighborhood children back downstairs, he discovered his clothes had been thrown out by his wife. It turned out that his and Yvonne's previous charity work at the subway had been published in the newspaper. His wife saw it and immediately asserted that the two of them had feelings for each other. No matter how Charlie explained, she wouldn't listen, wouldn't believe, wouldn't accept. To vent her anger, she even belittled Charlie. "Worthless, you idiot. You only know how to do what you deserve. to be a nobody your whole life. Faced with such blatant slander from the person he loved, Charlie neither retorted nor replied, because he knew who he was and knew he couldn't change. And his wife understood that too, so she proactively and decisively suggested divorce. Although he was reluctant to let go of a relationship of over 10 years, he couldn't hold back someone who wanted to leave. Charlie calmly accepted, then picked up 2 suitcases and quietly left the house that no longer belonged to him. At the same time, Yvonne was also deeply embroiled in problems with her ex-husband. It turned out that after learning Yvonne received $2 million, her debt-ridden ex-husband shamelessly came to demand money and immediately asked for $500,000. If Yvonne didn't agree, he would stubbornly stay in her house and refuse to leave. Since legally they were still husband and wife, Yvonne couldn't call the police. She could only helplessly pack her bags and flee from this persistent leech. However, fate is truly magical. When checking into a hotel, Yvonne coincidentally met Charlie, who was also there to stay. The two had already developed feelings for each other, and now meeting as if by destiny, their suppressed emotions could no longer be hidden. Intense love ignited. Unfortunately, after just one sweet night, the next morning they were surrounded by the media in front of the hotel. It turned out that yesterday they had been recognized by hotel staff, and the news of them staying together had spread. Since neither of them was officially divorced yet, they immediately became adulterous lovers. His wife, seeing the news, suddenly had an idea: to use public opinion to orchestrate a scheme. When signing the divorce agreement, she first demanded sole ownership of all the prize money. Considering their many years of marriage, Charlie very readily agreed. But his wife's greed went further. She also demanded Yvonne return the $2 million she had been given, threatening to sue if she didn't. Charlie felt his wife was going too far, so he angrily stepped forward and grabbed her arm to argue. Unexpectedly, this action backfired. He was falsely accused of assault. Unable to reach a settlement, both finally went to court. At the trial, Charlie's lawyer seized a crucial point: that the lottery numbers were chosen entirely by Charlie, not according to the wedding anniversary date his wife had instructed. Therefore, the prize money should rightfully belong to Charlie. However, he was still too naive, completely underestimating his wife's ability to fabricate stories. His wife bluntly said, "Our wedding date is indeed the 27th. But the night before Charlie bought the lottery ticket, my late father appeared in my dream and told me that our wedding anniversary date should actually be the 26th, and I always follow my father's words. So, from that moment on, the wedding anniversary date I speak of is the 26th. Although this explanation sounded very absurd, under the guidance of the gossip-loving media, it transformed into a touching story, as if divinely inspired. Thus, public opinion also began to lean towards the wife. Then, the wife's lawyer seized the opportunity to bring up Charlie's alleged violent behavior to lead the public and the judge to speculate whether the wife had been threatened, which is why she publicly expressed her desire to share $2 million with Yvonne, who was considered the homewrecker from the very beginning. In reality, if Yvonne had just denied her relationship with Charlie, she might not have lost this lawsuit. But she couldn't and wouldn't lie, because she had truly fallen in love with the intelligent, kind, and benevolent Charlie. And so, after many days of questioning, the wife gained public sympathy. Charlie became the betrayer of marriage, while Yvonne became a home wrecker and an extremely money-hungry girl. The verdict was clear: his wife won the case. Because this case had attracted a lot of attention from the beginning, as soon as the trial ended, the outside was packed with reporters. Yvonne could only hurriedly leave the scene under the pressure of public opinion. No matter how Charlie called her, she didn't turn back, because she didn't want to hear the reporters' harsh words. And Charlie didn't allow anyone to defile Yvonne's genuine feelings for him. The lottery girl, once famous, now made headlines due to scandal, and Charlie also for the first time felt the coldness and indifference of this city. The tide of public opinion was trying to completely drown the two of them. Worried about Yvonne, Charlie frequently went to her doorstep in the middle of the night, but never found her. That day, Charlie returned disappointed after sitting dazed for a long time on the subway. He felt compelled to walk to that familiar restaurant. When he pushed the door open and stepped in, he saw Yvonne quietly sitting under the moonlight. Having not seen her for several days, Charlie missed Yvonne dearly, but Yvonne's heart was filled with guilt because she thought that if it weren't for her appearance, Charlie could have lived a happy and fulfilling life with his wife, and that for $1 million. However, in Charlie's eyes, that small $4 million could not be as precious as his feelings for Yvonne. Yvonne had never been loved so much before, nor had she ever been chosen so steadfastly. Therefore, after learning of Charlie's true feelings, she also firmly chose to continue this relationship. Not only that, They also decided to leave the city and move to a strange place to start a new life. But just then, a knock on the door interrupted their reverie. A homeless man was standing outside, hoping to ask for a warm meal as before. Charlie and Yvonne, seeing this, didn't hesitate to welcome him in. After providing hot food, they hugged each other and moved to one side, while the homeless man took the opportunity to take out a camera and capture this heartwarming scene. It turned out that the homeless man's true identity was a famous reporter with 10 years of experience. The reason he disguised himself was to uncover truly touching stories from the perspective of ordinary, marginalized people. And Charlie and Yvonne, who were caught in the storm of public opinion, despite being pushed to the brink, still maintained their fervent love and kindness. How could one not call that true affection and love in this world? Although the verdict could not be changed, the reporter's truthful article restored Charlie and Yvonne's innocence. Not only that, as this article spread to every corner of the city, their love story also touched the hearts of every citizen. However, Charlie and Yvonne were completely unaware of all this. Just as they were about to say goodbye to this city and make one last visit to that memorable restaurant, they unexpectedly found the restaurant filled with letters, and in each letter, there was a small amount of money. It turned out that the city's residents, at the reporter's call, had voluntarily established a tip fund for Charlie and Yvonne because everyone felt that a warm city should not let kind people feel cold. Therefore, for the next 3 days, donation envelopes arrived continuously. Finally, after tabulation, the total amount donated reached an astonishing $600,000. Yvonne then used this money to buy back her restaurant, and Charlie returned to work at his familiar police station. His ex-wife married the white-bearded old man from the yacht. Unfortunately, that old man was a con artist. Not long after, he took all her assets and disappeared without a trace. His ex-wife, at her wit's end, had no choice but to humble herself and work at a nail salon. Finally, right in the center of the city, a romantic wedding hot air balloon gently rose into the sky. Charlie and Yvonne held hands, gently scattering invitation cards like flower petals into every corner of the city. These cards gently intertwined in the air like vibrant ribbons dancing in celebration. And this scene not only captured the glorious moment of their love, but also transformed their story into a classic love song that was widely recounted. Today's story ends here. Thank you for watching the movie. What do you think of this film? Please comment below.